Okay. Welcome to the Girl Gang podcast, you guys. Today I have my internet friend. I think we all have internet friends. Saba, the in demand VA. And when I first found your Instagram, I was like pronouncing it wrong in my head. I was like, the in demand. Yeah. Like, what?
Yeah,
It was so
I get
difficult.
it all the
And I was like,
time.
oh, well, people do that to me too, because like Amanda S. Dallas. And I'm like, no. But anyway, welcome to the Girl Gang podcast. And you are now here in Dallas, which is super exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
It's
It's
okay.
it's such a pleasure. It's such an honor to be able to chat about, what I do and where I come from and like where I'm headed and all that good stuff. So, as a girl to a girl, I am so excited to chat today.
Yeah, that's going to be good. Well, why don't you tell everybody just what it is that you do? I could tell people, but I don't think it would be communicated as well. But you have been an incredible resource to me in the last year or so. So tell people why that is.
So I am the name the in-demand VA comes from, scaling very fast in business. And because of that, I hit a roadblock and I wanted to, instead of, turning clients away, I wanted to become a bridge between VAs that are, already established, that are looking for clients because I could no longer take on clients. And so because I was in demand, I decided that I would create a free form to be able to connect entrepreneurs that are looking for a trained VA or a trusted VA. And so that's how, people that are looking for VA, they'll fill out the form and they'll go and I'll be able to connect them with one of my students because I am also a VA mentor to over
Yes.
100 VAs. In a little under a year, we've gotten 139 students. And so I've been able to individually chat with them and get them off the ground and out into the world and actually become in demand as well.
That's so crazy. And I think people hear such a fast growth story and they
Yeah.
wonder what happened. What did you do? What did it take? What did you sacrifice? Um, what do you think what you would attest that really rapid growth to?
I could I can put it on to two things. My discipline, which is something that cannot be taught. I've always had that. I've had that as a little kid growing up. My parents are very, very disciplined. And so one of it is being so rooted in discipline that I'm going to give it my all kind of mentality. And I'm going to stick to it. Even if it doesn't look like it's picking up right now, it's going to have to pick up because I'm giving it no other option kind of mentality. I can give it to that. And I can give it to being open and being a people person. Like I'm very social. I am always online. I'm always chatting. I'm always asking people, where did you come from? How did you start? Even if it has nothing to do with my business, I really just want to, get inside of people's heads and see, shout out to my psychology bachelor's and master's degree. But I really just like to get to know people. And through those conversations is how I've landed onto, oh, well, are you able to do this? I need someone for that. And I'm like, oh, well, I can, but also I have students who can't. And it's like a ripple effect from there.
I love it. So 139 students. So is your program like it's totally one-on-one because I cannot imagine working with 139 people one-on-one
No. Oh my
in the
gosh.
last year. Oh my gosh, you would never
No.
sleep.
No,
So
you
what
would
does it
not.
look like?
So it is a group coaching program or group mentorship program, and how it works is they join, and along with the course curriculum they have, which is already recorded there for them, they have a community group, and that's where we do the connection, right? And so instead of me meeting with them one on one, I meet with them. They get the curriculum, they go through it in a dripped format, but they also get to meet with me live 2 times a month. And sometimes that the calls go from like Q&A to like hangout to like now
I love
it's
it.
really just like our spot to like you know spend time together and really dig in. And those calls are so special to me because now even like their family members are like, are you on the phone with Saba again? And I'm like, hey, hey y'all, hey fam, because the family is starting to know me because it seems like we're on the phone so much, we're on Zoom so much. because we have such a great time. And then the community is where, we post all of our jobs daily. Those entrepreneurs that are looking for VAs, we post their jobs in our community. We also have guest trainings inside of the community, and any and all of everything else, all the encouragement happens in there. And it's really like, it's my favorite thing to do in the morning, to like kind of like bring me back to my why, is to go inside the community and read, what's happening with the students and their wins, their lows, their ups and highs, and so, all those things.
I That's so great. And I think, and you're using Facebook groups, right?
I am using now Mighty Networks.
Okay.
I used to use Facebook for a while, and then I was like, I really hate Facebook. And so I said that in a sense of like, I told my students, I was like, I only get on Facebook for y'all. Like, if it wasn't for y'all, I
Yeah.
would not be on here. So I was like, how can we, create a group where what you're looking at is what you came for? But, because on Facebook, you have everything else on the side, and all those, the 100 notifications that you haven't checked since 2012, and those things. And so I'm like, someone introduced me to my networks, and I was like, yes, I need all of it. Sign me up.
So was it difficult to get everybody transferred over from Facebook?
So it really wasn't.
Okay.
We let them know like, hey, we're thinking about this new platform. We're checking it out right now. And then we went to, oh my gosh, we love this platform. And I did a little walkthrough of them with them and showed them, this is why I would like to move here. What do you all think? And I got their feedback, and they were like, yes. And I basically pointed out all the pros. And then when it was time to move, I sent them a mass email, and I also dropped it in the Facebook group saying, hey, here's the new link to join. You have until XYZ to join, because we will not be active over here anymore.
Yeah.
And then I made sure that everyone moved over. And once everyone moved over, we gave a few reminders here and there in the Facebook group to make sure that everyone actually moved over.
Right.
And yeah, not everyone is in there, and everyone loves it. It has its own app as well, which
Yep.
makes joining the Zoom calls easier. No more reminder emails, and I can know who's coming and who's not to the events. And the job postings, they come. We post them daily. So for someone who's like really looking for a client, they can turn on those notifications, and they'll only be getting notifications from our group, rather than on Facebook you get notifications for everything.
Yeah. You really do.
Yeah,
I mean, if you ever comment on something or tag something, like, you'll forever be looped into
literally.
any
That's why
connection.
you have to eliminate yourself by getting off.
And it's interesting because that's where I started Dallas Girl Gang, is
Yeah,
our Facebook group. And
yeah,
it was set 2017, so it was a while ago. And I think anybody who wants to start a community now,
yeah.
do not start on Facebook.
No,
It will not
there's
work.
it won't work. And like, and again, when you think of community means this like fostered, curated group of people, right?
Yeah.
Just y'all, right? And so on Facebook, yes, inside of your group, it's just you, but just looking at the screen is very cluttered because it's everything
There's a
else.
lot.
And so, yeah, so if you really want to be intentional about creating a community that is like just your community, when you look in, the Mighty Networks does the job. And you can brand it, which is really nice. It matches everything else. And I love my little group. I really do.
I love it. We played with, or I looked at Mighty Networks like several years back when it was like really fresh.
Coming out,
Um,
yeah.
and I don't think it had a lot of the kinks worked out. And so I was like,
Yeah.
I don't like this.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like our Facebook group, I look at the stats every month and we still have like 95, 97% engagement
That's insane.
from 32,000 people.
That's insane.
But to your point, I only get on Facebook for them.
For them. Yeah.
And it's so interesting. I've been thinking about, do we switch to a different platform? I don't know if I trust Facebook anymore. Younger generations don't even have Facebook. A
Yeah.
lot of our generation, like we've been saying, like, we don't really check it and whatever.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I've been thinking about that too, and just thinking,
In your sense, I would say
yeah,
that my time period between moving the group was like a week and a half, because they knew that it was coming. And so for
right.
your sense, I would do a lot longer than that, maybe like a month's
Yeah, it would take some time.
reminder. So like, or even 2 months, 3 months, whatever. It's like, here's a 30-day reminder, here's a 14-day reminder, 7-day, 3-day,
Right.
1 day. We are moving over, moving over. And you won't shut down the group. Like my group is still there on Facebook, but
We're just not going to be
we,
checking it. Yeah.
yeah, you would also just give them reminders from there, like, hey, we moved over, we'd love to have you and all that good stuff. So
Yeah.
I do think, for what it's worth, to move to
Look
Mighty
back into it.
Network.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think anybody who's thinking about a community, or maybe like they've built a really great email list, or
Yeah.
their Instagram's very active and they can tell people want a different kind of connection,
Yeah.
I think something like Mighty Networks would be great. This
Yeah.
episode should be sponsored by Mighty
Yeah.
Networks.
I feel like Mighty Network should come in here and, like,
They need to pay
especially
Saba.
for your no, especially for your group. Your group is huge. It's huge, and you know you don't know how many of those people could create their own network from what they're learning from you and all that good stuff. So no,
Absolutely.
absolutely, Mighty Networks. I hope you're listening.
I hope you're listening. We're gonna study this episode.
Yes.
So you and I have been connected on Instagram for a while. I've posted some jobs with you,
Yeah.
and we've just stayed connecting. And then I found out you're moving to Dallas, and
Yeah.
so excited. But one thing you've talked about lately in your content that I just agreed with, and which initially made me say, let's talk about this on the podcast, is entrepreneurism and how people are really glorifying it. It looks like the height of luxury and blah blah, but
Yeah.
it's not.
Hmm.
It's hard. You've talked about using your business to pay off debt. You've
Yeah.
talked about the truths about like what you have to spend and what you get to pay yourself and things like that. And so um in the last few months, what's kind of sparked that conversation for you to want to talk about that publicly?
What really sparked is because I have, there's a group of people that are like rooting for you and completely under the girls who get it, and the girls who don't, right?
Absolutely.
um but then there's a group of people that are like, well, you had, and you must have had, and of course you can do XYZ because of XYZ. And I'm like, I try to remain as humble as possible, and I like to share that, when people say, well, you, of course you can't, and it's like, no, you don't know where I've come from until I've told you where I've come from. You can't assume that, because a lot of people are coming into your story at the tail end, or not at the beginning or in the middle or something like that, and they didn't get to really see. And so I was talking to a business coach who was like, you know what, you have to always tell your story from the beginning. And so I'm like, well, I've said it plenty of times. And she's like, it doesn't matter, because people are coming in to your platform at different times. And if you don't constantly share the beginning, they're going to think that, oh, you must have started right where I began, right where I became a part of your community. And so that's where I was like, you know what? I need people to know that it was not always this way. And for you, it will not always be this way. So if you are at your beginning, that it won't always be that way, right? And so sharing where I've come from and things that I've been able to do, and the highs and the very, very lows of getting into entrepreneurship and just doing life, period, is that it's like a valley. It's like up and down, and you have to understand that, like, everyone has a story to tell. And you'll be very surprised at what people have been able to do by just choosing themselves. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to be very open about, I used to be so ashamed about my debt, but then I started my business, and it allowed me to generate a lot of revenue that I probably would have never been able to generate working in corporate. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to tackle this debt, and I'm going to remind someone that, like, this girl had a negative 11 checking account less than 2 years ago, and my business has been able to propel me over $200,000. And so that's real life. That's real life. And I want people to know that, like, I'm a girl just like you.
I think if we surveyed everyone listening right now or in our stories on Instagram right now and asked people anonymously, do you have some kind of debt right now? whether it's
Yeah.
medical bills, credit card, student loans. I'm going to put money on the fact that over 60-70% would say yes.
Yeah.
Especially the student loan
Yeah.
portion. Like,
Mhm.
I went to a private Christian college and I loved it. It was worth it, but also was it? Like, it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're going to be paying for that for and
Oh,
and
wow.
it's crazy that this country lets 18-year-olds decide if they want to take out tens of thousands of dollars in loans.
Yeah.
That's a whole other conversation. But
Yeah.
a lot of people have debt. It's not a part of American culture, but like that's just how it is. And I
That's just
think
how it is.
no
Yeah.
one should be ashamed of that.
Yeah.
And if you are and you think you need to do something about it, do something about it.
Yeah.
Like take
I
responsibility
shared
and do
that
it.
the other day that like I've had this debt, carry on for months and years. And it wasn't until I was sick of it. Like it was a burden on my shoulders, a true burden that like I could think about, I could feel, and then I had the money, right? Allowed me to really, like, all right, now is the time, because you can budget all you want. I don't, shout out to Dave Ramsey. I think he has great, insight, but some of his insight doesn't make sense. You can't budget what you don't have, right? You can't save what you don't have. So like when growing up, you think that, okay, I'm just going to pay my credit card little by little. I was making less than $30,000 a year in corporate for just 11 years, right? And I racked up over $20,000 in credit card debt. Where was I going to pay that off at? Where was I going to budget to pay that off at? Right. So it's like once I started making, I mean, just last month I made $27,000. So that just goes to show that like once you're able to make more money, you can tackle your debt. Right. But where does that even come from? It's deciding that, okay, this is enough. I don't want to work for this little anymore. I don't want to work for this group of people anymore. I want to do something that's going to make me more, allow me to live more. And making that decision to become a VA allowed me to literally dig and curate this life that I thought was absolutely impossible for me.
Yep. And my jaw dropped because that it like $30,000 a year, like no one can really live off of that.
No,
And
I'm
I
like, I
think
can't believe that's all we made.
that is absolutely insane. Absolutely well, and here's why I think when we talk about money also, we could talk, and this is I think what triggers me in the
Yeah.
online space is people
Yeah.
like 6 and 7 figure blah bullshit whatever, but no one's talking about again the day one of their story. But
Yeah.
also some people's day one, they had $30,000 to start their business.
Oh yeah.
They had money from their parents
Mm-hmm.
or a business partner. When my husband and I were buying our first house about a little over a year ago, um, first of all, millennials buying their own house seems impossible these
Yeah.
days,
Yeah.
especially if you live in like a metropolitan area. But we kept looking at all of our friends that we graduated with and all this stuff. We were like, everyone bought a house like 4 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
what happened? And then we did a little digging. 75% of them got their down payment from their parents
Yeah.
or from like a rich uncle or like a great
Yeah, or a trust fund or
trust
something
fund
that
or
was
a
left behind.
grandparent,
Yeah.
which I don't see that and be like, oh my gosh. I'm like, that is amazing. I wish I had a rich uncle.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm kind of jealous
I'm
about
kind
that.
of jealous. But it made us really appreciate how hella hard we worked to save and do it all on our own.
Yeah.
And that's what felt so good. And I just think there's something to like having a really good perspective. Like there are huge podcasters and people in the public eye who are making millions. They're set for life. But they
Yeah.
still like they'll bring up the price of something and they're like, "Oh, that's a little expensive." And I'm like, "Yeah, I think that too." Like if you're like a
Yeah.
rich person and I'm like a normal person, like we both think it's
Exactly.
expensive. That's a really great healthy perspective. And I think that, I don't know, I think that's just healthy, you
I
know?
also tell people that, I think the reason why I even have an emotional reaction when I talk about my business and, where I've come from and all those things is because just like you buying your first home, it was something that was truly built from nowhere. Like I lost my job just like the rest of the world, during COVID. And I, I mean, I was already not living above my means and not having enough to live that life, and now you want to start a business with what money, and I kid you not, my first course, which is a virtual assistant course, I bought was on a gift card that was given to me by my job to go sit at home for 8 months. They were like, hey, here's this $1,000 gift card while you wait for unemployment. And a friend of mine encouraged me to become a VA, and I was like, "Ugh, fine." Like I really didn't want to do it, and I'm like, you know what, fine. I put it on that. $500 went on that gift card out of 1,000 to join that course, and that's kind of like where my course transpired. Like once I, really dug into becoming a VA, I felt like I did more work outside the course than I got from the course. So I decided that I was like, you know what, I'm going to fill in the gaps because there's some gaps here. And I did. And that specific course is very much one of my direct competitors now. And I have a lot of their students now on the side. So it's, and even that though, right, is just wow, right? When I tell, when I encourage people, you got to invest in yourself, and they're like, yeah, Saba, like you probably already had the money. And I'm like, girl, don't tell my story for me. I put my first course on a gift card that was supposed to feed me because I wasn't getting unemployment yet because you're just sent home. So like
Yeah.
when people jump to that conclusion that like, oh, it must, and I'm like, no, 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 no. You don't get to tell my story for me. Let me tell you what it was like to get here, because again, people just have like this notion that it must have been, this smooth sailing, trip. Everything went right, and I'm like, no, no, no. We don't say these stories. We don't tell our stories like in order to trip you up and trick you and to make you feel for us. It's like I want you to know that like I'm a regular, degular girl, just
I
like
love
you.
it. I think, and this is kind of something I want to get into. I think some people do think there are people out there telling their story
Yeah,
to trick them,
yeah,
to just get them in with emotional marketing or really like scarcity mindset and pinpointing their fears and trying to rake them in.
yeah,
And I think there's weird shit going on in the online space right now. Here we
yeah,
are, March 2022. That you cannot do what you did in 2020 to just
yeah.
land clients,
No.
or fill spots or sell your course or whatever. And so what are you I want to hear from you. What are you seeing, and what are maybe thoughts that you have on things right now, and have things changed for you?
So to answer the question backwards, things have very well changed. Like you said, it's a lot harder now to get people to even want to chat with you for like free so that you can explain, the transformation that you can provide them in your program or your mentorship or whatever. And, I just experienced that the other day. I've mentored over 100 students, and all of them just came through, word of mouth. I haven't ran a single ad or anything like that. And had one student that wanted to join this last round, and she's like, I need to get on the phone with you. And I'm like, well, normally how this works is I don't normally get on the phone with you. Like we don't do like a sales call or anything. Like it's not that much of an investment, so we don't do that. And she's like, no, I really need to get on the phone with you. And I'm like, okay, okay, well, we can get on a Zoom call. And she's like, I need to get on the phone with you. And so she did. And she was recommended by one of my current students. And she got on, and what she shared with me, I understand now why she wanted to get on the phone with me. She's like, I've purchased a course before for thousands of dollars, and as soon as she paid, she's still to this day has never received the course. and it's from a huge account. And she's like, I've reached out, I've talked, I've tried to get into contact, and she's like, I needed to know, like, I've heard that Saba does these calls, and Saba meets with her students, and her students actually talk to her, and she gives them personalized feedback. I needed to know if that was real. And the way that I could know is that you decided to get on the call with me. She's like, if you would not have gotten on the call with me, like, not in like in a pressure way, but like if you would have not, it would have just sent me back in that headspace that like you must be just like them. And she joined the course maybe like an hour after we got off the call. And she's loving it so far.
This is the kind of stuff that we're seeing, and this is the kind of really it's making it more difficult for the good ones
The
out
honest
there,
ones, yeah.
the honest ones, because when there's a sheep or a wolf in sheep's clothing, I should say,
Yeah.
like you don't know
You don't
until,
know.
but now, now that we're kind of down the road and some of this stuff is being exposed and people's trust is now just drastically dropped.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, I'm seeing it, you know, um, and it makes it difficult to, it also makes you, I'm not going to do some big song and dance just to get you
Yeah.
in. In a perfect world, my work and client, success and their transformation
Yeah.
and their honest testimony should be proof enough,
Yeah, yeah. I
right?
definitely like I kind of stand on both of them. So like I'm like, sometimes certain people will need that extra push. And then
Sure.
there's other times I stand in my truth. If I have two highlights full of testimonials. I have over 100 students. I have our student rate is like 88% completion rate. I have handful of students that have completely quit their jobs, started their own business, out earned their corporate income in less than half a year. Like I also have to stand in that and know that like I know you may have had a bad experience, but I am being honest. And that is also in a discernment thing on their end that like you
Mhm.
have to feel. And I had to ask her, I was like, was there some type of reservation when you were getting ready to purchase, and did the reviews match up and all the, and she's like, there, like, I did feel like maybe I shouldn't have, but I did it anyways. And I'm like, that I can't pay for that. I
Yeah.
can't pay for that.
And I think that people are getting smarter about that.
Yeah.
And they're able to see the real results
Yeah.
um of the people who went through the program, did the work, saw the transformation, or didn't. Or you can also too kind of tell if things were manufactured or
Yeah.
testimonials were
Just
very
written, like,
just
not
written.
actually voice, not actually video, whatever. I even, when I'm like in an Instagram live and I'm talking about my student success, oh, I tagged them. I'm like, hey, Lene, somebody call Lene into this live for me, because I'm like, I'm talking about Lene, and so now I want to bring Lene up on the stage, and they normally pop in. They're like, hey, Sam, like, what's going? I'm like, hey, tell them how long it's taken you to quit your job, and tell them where you came from, because it's real,
Yeah.
right? Because it's real, and so the online space is very weird, but
Yeah.
I remain true to myself. I remain true that I can give results, and that I do give results, and
Right.
that at the end of the day, as long as I remain honest, you'll reap those benefits. And I tell my students to do the same. Like, you always, integrity goes the longest.
It
Integrity
really
will take
does.
you further than your money can. That's for sure.
Yeah, it really does. So, what would you say to someone who, because I've heard this a lot in just conversations with people, and I think we all felt a little weird beginning of 2022.
Yeah.
Everybody always expects something magical to happen once it turns
And
January 1, but like
no.
nothing happens. Um, what would you say to people that are like, it feels slow for me right now? Like, I feel like I'm trying so hard, or, you know, Instagram is a moody bitch
Doing
sometimes,
this thing, yeah.
doing its own thing. What would you say to people that are having a hard time, that are like, I'm good at what I do. I've had clients. I have clients. I have great whatever. But they just can't seem to, you know, make
And
it.
so it's funny thing is because I experienced the same thing in the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
and I actually yesterday in my planner, is why you can hear me flipping pages. Yesterday in my planner, I always drop like little notes to myself in my planner, and it reads, "There's no good in rushing. You will only reach your destination prematurely and unprepared." And so that's something that in a slow season, you're in a slow season for a reason. And so whatever that may be, like for myself, I pushed and pushed and pushed from the very beginning to now. And now I'm like, I need to scale back to scale forward. And so if you find yourself in a slow season, just know that maybe there's some back end things that you need to that you've been putting off, that you need to, streamline a little better. Maybe there's someone you need to reconnect with. Maybe, there's clients that you're holding on to just for the money, and you need to let them go so that you can make room for the busy season, because there's going to be an amazing client that's going to come around. Like in your slow season, I think we got caught up in the online space that, after this, we got to do this, after this, we got to do this. And it's just like, where is the pause? And if you don't intend on pausing, if you don't intend on slowing down, like, why didn't you just stay in corporate? Because isn't that what corporate does, right? There's no pausing in that world, right? And so it's not getting so caught up in, oh my gosh, it's slow, thinking that that means that your business is coming to an end. And that's just, no matter, every corporation, every business has up and downs, has slow seasons, has high seasons, has push seasons, all those things. And you have to be, if you intend on, playing the long game, you have to understand that slow seasons come, and it really almost has nothing to do with you. It's really like everything that's going on around you, and how are you going to respond to that? Are you going to crumble, or are you going to use the time that you have and try to find another way? Get a little more creative, talk to other people who are experiencing it and seeing what got them out of that slow season, or what got them out of that funk and stuff like that. So I now appreciate slow seasons, and people are like, well, you're going to make less money. And I'm like, if I have to lose myself to make more money, I think I'll take the less money. I think I'll do that.
And I think some people haven't experienced that yet.
Yeah.
And so, like, I know you have, and I know what's worth it and I know what's not
Yeah. One of
at
my
the end of the
favorite
day.
things is to tell people that when they're like, Saba, when does it get to like where you are? And I'm like, it gets there, but one of the things is that you don't get to skip the beginning. You can do all that you want. I could give you the blueprint. I could give you the cheat code. I could give you my course. I could give you the clients. I could give you all the things, right? But you will not skip the beginning. You'll go the same steps as I did. You just have a plan in place because it was given to you. You'll have guidance, you'll have support, but you still don't get to skip the beginning stages. You still don't get to skip the slow days. You still don't get to skip I'm not making no money for the first 3 months of you don't get to skip that. My first VA client was $13 an hour. That's less than what I was making in corporate, but I did it because of her network. I knew that if I worked for her, I would tap into her network, and I did it. Right. And some VAs now, they're like, I would not work for $13. Well, then you can't be the in-demand VA then, because that I became the in-demand VA starting there. And now I have clients that are willing to pay me over $200 an hour for just consult, just talking to them, right? And that's the thing, is people want to skip the beginning stages. And in the beginning stages is where you understand and where you get to learn that like slow doesn't always mean slow. Like it really just means that like there's things that you can be doing that you need to get to doing. There's always something to do, literally.
Oh, we know this. Yeah, there's, sometimes my husband I'll say like, "Oh, I got a few things to do," because I don't want to like go through my whole thing of like explaining. I
Yeah.
got to edit this workflow and blah blah blah. He didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk forever, and he's like, "Well, what else do you have to do?" And I'm like, "Do you really want to know?" There's always stuff to do,
There's always
and
something.
that was probably like early on, when I was started making this a full
Yeah.
time thing. But
Now
yeah,
my boyfriend is just like, was it a productive day? And I'm like, yes, it was a
Yes, it
productive
was.
day.
That's great.
Rather than asking me like, what did you do? And I'm like, are you sure you want to know what I did? Because if I grab this planner over here, we're going to be here for a minute. Go grab a drink, because what I do in a day is a lot more than it seems. Right. So now he's just
Yeah.
like, okay, let's sum it up. Were you productive or were you not?
Is your boyfriend here in Dallas or no?
He's in Atlanta actually,
Okay.
and so we've been long distance from before I moved here, and he's super supportive when it comes
I love
to
it.
working remote. And actually, before I became a VA, he was not my boyfriend at the time, and he was actually the last person that I spoke to before I purchased that course, before I punched my card into the course platform and bought it, because I was like, hey, my friend keeps telling me to do this thing. And he's like, well, what else are you going to do with your time? Like, your job just laid you off. And, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I don't really want to do this thing, And so he's like, well, I hope. He's very like nonchalant. He's like, well, I hope at the end of the year, you're not one of the people that looks back and regrets that you didn't use your time. And I was like, oh, I am not one of those girls. No. So I just like went and I like punched it, and I was like, I'm a VA now. Like, I'm gonna become this VA. And he's like, okay, cool. And actually, what's so crazy is that he's also the person who gave me the name the In Demand VA. And he was not my boyfriend at the time.
Partners are so great.
Yeah.
Like, I've gotten so many ideas and help from my husband over the years.
Yeah.
That's
We could
when he
never do
said that
business
to you.
together. We
Oh
could never do
no.
business together, because I'm like, you don't get to run the boss lady's things. But
No, he's definitely
he's
okay
very
with me being the
supportive.
boss.
Yeah, he's very supportive, and I like that. And that goes to kind of piggyback off what we are talking in the beginning. And some people feel like, well, this is hard, and like, I thought that I was going to lose a lot of friends when I became a business owner, and I actually did lose a handful of people that just didn't understand my schedule, didn't seem to care to understand, and stuff like that. And what I gained in the entrepreneur space, what was friends that I couldn't even dream of. So yes, I lost some, but the ones that I got were the ones that I needed, because they understand where I am, because they're in the same space. And so it if anyone is like thinking about going in the entrepreneur route, it's not easy at all. Like, I don't even like encourage people, yeah, become your own boss. I'm like, are you sure you want to become your own boss? Because
Right.
if that's what you want to do, it's a bitch.
Yeah.
It's a lot, right? So it's I tell people that like things come along the way. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
Things come along the way. You just have to decide that like you're up, you're up for a prize.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. That it's always interesting navigating your relationships, your friendships, your family if you do become a business owner, because not everybody's going to understand.
Yeah,
Um but and we talked about this in the episode that came out this week with Monet Bailey. And we have very differing opinions of what we should sacrifice, but also she has a very different business model and vision.
yeah,
And yeah, it's always so interesting. And you don't want to hit burnout, but also, I was talking to someone this morning in my DMs, and she was like, I'm working a 9 to 5. I have this business. It's really, it's like a side hustle right now. I want to go full time, but time management is hard. I'm trying to do vendor
yeah,
pop ups and blah, blah. And I said, if you want to know what, like the honest truth of what I did, I was teaching 7 a.m. to 4. So I was getting up at 6 or before.
yeah,
I was working on my business like 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And I would like maybe take a break for dinner. Well, not maybe. I
yeah,
would definitely take a break for dinner. Like, this girl doesn't skip a meal. But
yeah,
eat dinner, maybe take a walk, maybe work out, probably not. And
yeah.
then go to bed early and maybe watch an
Do it
episode
all
of
again.
TV, do it all again. I would work on the weekends. There
Yeah,
was a point where I was doing way too much, and I had a come to Jesus meeting with my husband
yep,
twice because the first one
mhm,
didn't take. But
yeah,
that's what it took. And
yeah.
that's just the truth.
And
People,
people don't realize that, like, they're like, oh, Saba, what would you do if you could go back and like start over and whatever. And I was like, the thing that I would do is I would prioritize myself, is because I lost a bit of myself becoming an entrepreneur. And it was because was just I was in this hustle mode. I've never been an entrepreneur before. And so I did what I saw, which was everyone around me was hustling. So I thought that I needed to hustle. And so I stopped working out. And, I started working from sun up to sundown. I worked every single weekend. I couldn't have time for people. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that because I'm building this business. And although those things did give me a lot of results, right? But in return, I hit a wall in
Hmm.
2021 and I was like, I don't know who I am. When people ask me, like, what do you want? The things that come out of my mouth are business related.
Yes.
And I realized that, like, I became my business, not a person, a part of my business. And I was like, no, this can't be it. This can't be it. And I need to detach. I need to go, which is so funny because I have a new offer that's coming out soon that it's a mastermind. It's called Beyond the Role. And that's, it happened to me. I had to go beyond my role of being an assistant, go beyond the role of just being a team member and really think outside the box of, like, why did I get into this? I got into this to live beyond my desk. And that's what we promote. So if you're not living that, how can you be promoting that? Right. And so now I'm in a very calm season, where I am going back to the drawing board, going back to the basics, and really, what is Saba like? Do I wanted a morning routine, and so now I don't rush to the desk anymore. I have my morning routine, and I slowly go into work, and I slowly leave work, right? And I leave work before the sun goes down, just
Yeah.
like everyone else. So it's like it entrepreneurship, when you get into it, you just everything around you just makes you feel like you gotta keep up with the Joneses, and in doing that, I did lose myself. I lost myself, and I didn't recognize myself. And so, like, there's days where I loved what I was doing because it was making good money and it was changing lives, but I hated who I was, and it's not worth the money. It's just
Yeah.
not.
It's not the vibe.
No.
Um, I would say I had a period of that too. For me, it was 2019. I just was saying yes to everything, running myself
Yeah.
into the ground. And then end of that year, I was like, oh, I have put my self care, my mental health, my physical health just in the toilet.
Yeah.
And so, oddly enough, 2020 rolled around. I was still teaching. And then the pandemic happened. And as bad as this sounds, I was relieved because we then got to teach from home.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I think that was like the Lord kind of putting me
Yeah.
on a back seat and just being like, okay, you need to chill and let's prioritize. And um yeah, there is still a big hustle culture, but that's not what I'm about. And I think it is crazy to see a lot of other entrepreneurs in different kind of spaces making it look very sexy and
Yeah.
being like, I'm on the beach at the Dominican Republic or I'm in France right now,
Yeah.
blah, blah. But they're not telling people, like, oh, I got a consulting client from when I left corporate and it's
Yeah.
$50,000 a year flat. Or
Yeah.
I I still work part-time for a corporate job. Or
Or there's days where, yes, my business has generated hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? But there's days where I'm like, I wish I had a regular job. And
yeah,
there's days where I'm even like looking, I'm like, I could just get a regular job and someone could just tell me what to do and I could just clock in and clock out and I don't have to be the head. And I'm like, that's what I want. There's days where I'm like, that's what you want. That's really what, but it's like that is what you want, but you can create that in your own business. And that's where we draw the line, is where you figure out, okay, if you're craving that freedom that you got into this for, create it in your business, because now it's yours. You can do that. And that's where you eliminate the hustle culture, because it's like, I'm telling you, I love my business. I love what I do. I really, really, really do. It's absolutely my purpose in life. But there are days where I don't love working. I don't love
Sure.
answering to the
Yeah.
clients. I don't love the way I was spoken to. I don't love the way, a contractor passed off work to me. I don't love that I had to stay up over the weekend to finish something because someone else slacked off. I don't love those things. But those things come with entrepreneurship. And if you are expecting entrepreneurship to have like, there's people who get online, they're like, well, I can't believe that client was like, she was being putting me down, and she was like, and I'm like, oh, you haven't been put down in corporate before? These are the same people. They're just online. That's it. People are still people. So if you're thinking you're gonna, dream clients are just gonna flood from heaven, no, right? And your dream client could even turn into your nightmare client. It's happened to me. So it's like you have to be okay with the change. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable because the entrepreneurship is so uncomfortable.
It really is. And I think so if we have these thoughts of like, oh, it would just be easy to like go to a job, then why do we do this?
Yeah.
Like obviously we all have an answer, but for you in those moments, you're like, well, this is what I'm doing. I don't feel like doing it right now.
Yeah.
When you reflect back on that, what continues to make you choose to keep going?
What really makes me move forward is I have a lot of testimonials for my students that I swipe through, but there's one specific one that is a voice note, and she's like, Saba, I know there must be days where your job is really hard, and I'm like, how does she know that? How does she even know that? She's like, I know there's days where your job is really hard, but if you ever forget or ever think that this is not what you're supposed to be doing, I want to remind you that it is. And it's because she was able to also quit her job and stay home with her son, and she's doing amazing. And those things bring me back. And normally what I like to do is like when I feel like I've hit a wall, I log off, I walk away, and I take the time that I need because I realize that pushing through is not effective. And while I'm in that space of scaling back or taking time, is when I go and I get back to my why. And I'm like, Saba, do you really want to work for someone else? Do you really want to give up the business that you started and watch someone else run it because you would have to sell it or, just close it down? What would that do for that community that you put so much work into? That community, those people like depend on you. They depend on each other. They've built a life out of that. And you're just going to throw it away because today is hard. That's really what you want to do. Those are the conversations that I have with myself. And then I'm like, I can't I can't take that burden. I can't take that burden on to know that I gave up. As the girl who's telling you not to give up today, I gave up because it was a little hard. And now that doesn't go to say that there's some entrepreneurs I know that have closed their business because it was too much, and kudos to them because I know that feeling. And sometimes it isn't worth it to stay in it. But you'll know when it is. If and when it's time to let it go, you will know. And I hope you do let it go. Because again, so you can pass it on. But for me, those moments that I had and that I have, they're just little bumps. I know they're little bumps in the road. They're not the end. It's like that window before your breakthrough, really. That's really always what it is.
And I think there's so much trust
Mm-hmm.
and that you have to have with yourself and with I guess whoever, whatever you believe in, like the
Yeah.
universe, God, whatever, of just kind of a little bit of blind, I know it's going to work out.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so scary, especially for people that's not their personality or the people around them don't get that, because entrepreneurship is the opposite of security.
Yeah.
um
Nothing is secure. Like nothing. Not a single thing.
yeah, not
Not a
at all.
single thing. And I'm glad like inside of my program, the very beginning of the program is getting down to your why. Before we jump into the skills, before we jump into all those things, I need my students and I have them do an exercise where they, you know, discuss with me what their why is, and we dig deep. I'm like, it needs to
Yeah.
have an emotional connection. I need to know that this is something, if you get it, you are going to be boo-hoo crying.
It's funny because that's what I start my signature program
Yeah.
with. And it's really important. And I
And I
tell
have
them,
students that go back and they're like, they'll be in, in the middle of the program or at the end, and they're like, Saba, today I had to go back to my why because I was getting frustrated. And I'm like, yes,
good.
that's exactly why it's there.
Yeah.
That's exactly why we do it.
Yeah. Uh, this has been really fun. I think we could talk about so many different things.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time today. Where can people find you online?
So my website is theindemandva.com. On Instagram, I'm theindemandva.com. You can also, the link in my bio on Instagram or on my website will point you to, if you're an entrepreneur looking for a VA, there's a free service there for you for us to connect you to any of our trained VAs and only our trained VAs. If you are someone that is looking into maybe becoming a VA, our course is not enrolling at the moment, but there is a wait list and you can join that. Or you can just catch up with me in my DMs. Like, I'm super open.
Yeah.
It is actually me. A lot of students that have wrote me, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you answered back," and I'm like, "Yes, I'm still managing my DMs." I feel
Yeah.
like that's important, and I prefer to hire everyone else in my team, but I want to talk to you. I want to be that point of
Yeah.
contact, at least on Instagram. So definitely come and say hi. Thank you so much, Amanda, for having me on
Yeah.
the podcast. It's been awesome, and hopefully we'll meet since I'm like
Yeah.
right down the road from you.
I know. We need to go have dinner or something. Thank you guys for listening. Go connect with Saba, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.